There is a city in California that still stands today. Its houses are still there, its roads are still there, even some of its buildings remain intact, but no one is allowed to visit it. And even stranger, it is not the only one. Across California, there are towns that were once home to thousands of people, then were simply abandoned. Some were buried by the desert. Some are hidden in mountains that are almost impossible to reach, and others sit in places so remote or dangerous that almost no one has ever seen them in person. These places are not just dead towns, they are frozen time capsules, holding stories of wealth, disaster, greed, and mysteries not fully forgotten. Hidden in the marshes of San Francisco Bay, Drawbridge may be the most forbidden ghost town in all of California. Drawbridge sits inside a federal wildlife refuge and is closed to the public. There is no official road to this location. The only way to reach it is by crossing dangerous marshland or active railroad tracks, an act that can lead to legal violations and serious safety risks. This small town was founded in the late 19th century as a vacation destination for San Francisco residents. But over time, land subsidence, tidal flooding, fires, vandalism, and isolation slowly destroyed the community. Many structures have collapsed or sunk because of the harsh environment. Since it is located inside a conservation area, the government bans public access to protect migratory bird habitat and the wildlife that now controls the former town. Standing at more than 8,000 feet in the Inyo Mountains, Cerro Gordo was once one of the richest and most dangerous mining towns in California. In the late 19th century, Cerro Gordo's silver and lead mines produced millions of dollars and helped fuel the growth of Los Angeles, which was still developing at the time. When the mineral deposits began to run out, residents slowly left Cerro Gordo. Unlike Bodie, which is managed as a state park, Cerro Gordo sits on private land. Visitors cannot freely explore the area however they want, and access to various buildings and mine areas is controlled by the property owner. Its remoteness is also part of its appeal and its danger. In the middle of the dry Mojave Desert, Eagle Mountain stands as one of California's largest and most closed-off ghost towns. Unlike most ghost towns born from the 19th century gold rush, Eagle Mountain was a modern company town built in 1948 to serve Kaiser Steel's iron ore mine. But when iron ore prices collapsed and mining operations became unprofitable, the closure was finally announced in the 1980s. Most of the area sits on private land, and many buildings have suffered serious damage after decades of exposure to desert weather. What makes Eagle Mountain feel so eerie is its scale. This is not just a few old buildings in the desert, but the remains of a complete modern town abandoned almost all at once. Hidden deep in the rugged mountains on the edge of Death Valley National Park, Panamint City is one of the hardest ghost towns to reach in California. No paved road leads directly to this location. Panamint City was born in the early 1870s after rich silver deposits were discovered in the area. In a short time, the town grew into a busy mining center. Today, all that remains are stone foundations, old walls, building ruins, and scattered mining relics along a remote canyon. This isolation is what makes Panamint City different from many other ghost towns. It is not because the government bans visitors, but because nature itself has become the main barrier. On the barren edge of the Mojave Desert, Garlock stands as one of California's most forgotten ghost towns. This small town appeared in the late 19th century as a supply center for various gold and silver mining operations growing in the nearby El Paso Mountains. Today, only a handful of old buildings and ruins remain in the quiet desert landscape. Most of the area sits on private land, so access to many parts is not fully open to the public. The fragile condition of the buildings and lack of supervision also make free exploration unadvisable. Garlock has been almost forgotten by mainstream tourism. Empty roads, decaying buildings, and desert silence create an atmosphere that seems to freeze time more than a century ago. In the middle of a remote desert stretch between Death Valley National Park and the Inyo Mountains, Darwin looks like a town slowly disappearing from the modern world. Unlike many ghost towns that are completely abandoned, Darwin exists in a gray area between a living town and a dead one. Only a handful of residents still remain among empty buildings, silent roads, and aging infrastructure under the harsh California desert sun. Today, Darwin's population is only a small fraction of what it once was. Many abandoned homes, decaying old buildings, and rusting vehicles scattered around town create a scene that makes it feel like a post-apocalyptic film location. Although it is not officially closed to the public, Darwin is not a tourist destination designed for visitors. Most properties are privately owned, and the residents who still live there generally value their privacy. Far up in the remote mountains of Chemung, near the California and Nevada border, stand the remains of one of the most forgotten mining camps in the state. Chemung has almost disappeared from public memory. Even many Californians themselves have never heard its name. Today, only a few structures still survive. Most of what remains consists of building foundations, mine ruins, and leftover equipment scattered across the harsh mountain landscape. Its extremely remote location makes Chemung rarely visited compared with other California ghost towns. The road to the area is mostly made up of desert and mountain tracks that are not always easy to pass. Although visiting is not officially forbidden, its isolation creates a natural barrier that keeps very few people from reaching the site. On the eastern edge of Owens Lake, which has now mostly dried up, Keeler stands as a grim reminder of how environmental change can destroy a town. In the late 19th century, Keeler grew as an important port on Owens Lake, serving the booming silver and lead mining industry in the surrounding region, including the famous mines of Cerro Gordo. But Keeler's fate changed drastically in the early 20th century, when water from Owens Valley began being diverted to Los Angeles through a massive aqueduct system. Today, only a few dozen residents still remain in what was once a busy town. Many old buildings stand empty, while the quiet streets give the impression that time stopped decades ago. Although Keeler is not closed to the public, most historic buildings sit on private land and cannot be freely entered. Standing in one of the most remote and hottest regions of California, this town developed in the early 20th century as a service point for the railroad and surrounding desert communities. During World War II, the area was also used for desert military training activities, adding to its strategic role in a region far from population centers. Today, all that remains are building ruins, partially collapsed structures, and empty roads surrounded by stretches of sand as far as the eye can see. Its distance from major cities makes Rice rarely visited compared with other famous ghost towns. Extreme remoteness, summer temperatures that can exceed 110 degrees Fahrenheit, and the lack of nearby emergency services make this place feel far more isolated than most other California ghost towns. In the heart of the Mojave Desert, Randsburg is one of the oldest mining towns still surviving in California. Founded in 1895 after gold was discovered in the area, Randsburg quickly grew into a busy mining center. Unlike many other boom towns that completely disappeared after their mines faded, Randsburg managed to survive, though on a much smaller scale. Today, only a few hundred residents still live there, while much of the downtown area still preserves historic wooden buildings that make it feel as if time stopped more than a century ago. Although it is not fully a ghost town, Randsburg is often included on lists of California ghost towns because of its unique atmosphere. Many old buildings, former mining facilities, and streets that have barely changed since the Wild West era can still be found throughout the town. Several old mining areas have also long been abandoned and are slowly being consumed by time. On the western edge of Death Valley National Park, Ballarat was once an important supply center for miners working in the Panamint Mountains. When mining production declined in the early 20th century, residents began leaving the town and local businesses slowly closed one by one. Today, only a handful of buildings still stand in the vast, quiet desert. Although a few seasonal residents lived there for years, the town has essentially long since become a ghost town. Unlike Drawbridge or Cerro Gordo, which have certain access restrictions, Ballarat can be visited legally. However, its remote location, distance from emergency services, and extreme desert conditions still make a trip there require careful preparation. Along the legendary Route 66, Amboy stands as one of California's most iconic and quietest desert towns. At its peak, Amboy was an important stop for travelers crossing the Mojave Desert. But everything changed in the 1970s when the construction of Interstate 40 redirected most traffic away from Route 66. In a short time, visitor numbers collapsed drastically. Today, only a handful of buildings still operate on a limited basis, while most of the area preserves a silence that makes it often described as a semi-ghost town. Empty roads, old buildings exposed to desert heat for decades, and an extremely remote location create a scene that feels like a time capsule from Route 66's golden age. On the high plains of eastern California, at an elevation of around 8,375 feet, Bodie is one of the most famous and best-preserved ghost towns in the United States. At its peak, Bodie had around 10,000 residents, but behind its prosperity, Bodie was also known for violence, robbery, shootouts, and high crime. Its reputation was so bad that it inspired the famous line from a young girl who wrote in her diary, "Goodbye, God, I'm going to Bodie." When gold production began to decline in the early 20th century, residents slowly left the town. Major fires and economic decline sped up Bodie's fall until it eventually became a ghost town. Although it is open to the public, Bodie has very strict rules. Taking anything from the site is strictly forbidden, and for decades, a legend known as the Curse of Bodie has circulated, claiming that anyone who brings home an artifact from the town will suffer bad luck until the object is returned. In the desert hills near Barstow, Calico was once one of California's most productive silver mining towns. Founded in 1881 after rich silver deposits were discovered, Calico grew at an incredible speed. Calico's wealth came from millions of dollars in silver extracted from the surrounding mountains. But that glory did not last long. By the early 20th century, Calico had practically become a ghost town. Unlike many other ghost towns that slowly collapsed and disappeared, Calico got a second chance when businessman and well-known local figure Walter Knott bought the area in the 1950s and began a large restoration project. Many historic buildings were rebuilt based on original photos and records to revive the atmosphere of the Wild West era. In the middle of the barren Mojave Desert, Bagdad was once a small stop serving travelers, railroad workers, and desert residents along the transportation corridor of Eastern California. In the early 20th century, the town grew through a combination of railroad routes and vehicle traffic crossing the desert. But Baghdad's survival depended heavily on the flow of travel through the area. When modern highway systems began replacing older routes and transportation patterns changed, the number of travelers dropped drastically. The economic activity that supported the town slowly disappeared, causing residents and local businesses to leave the area. Over time, most buildings vanished because of demolition, harsh desert weather, and decades without maintenance. Today, almost nothing remains of Baghdad except traces of history and a few scattered foundation ruins in the desert landscape.